Athlete Podcast Network, where every 2 weeks I will be chatting with ordinary people doing extraordinary things on their path to their own finish line.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 18 of Beyond the Finish Line, a trail running podcast that dives deep into stories, struggles, triumphs that extends far beyond the trails. I'm your host, Joe Harden. I'm a passionate trail and ultra-distance runner myself. Today, I'm thrilled to bring on Scotty Kummer. Scotty hosts a wildly popular podcast called 10 Junk Miles Podcast, which I'm a huge fan of, even though admittedly I am absolutely shit at the trivia questions. For me and for many others, I think TJM transcends just being a podcast. It's very clear listening to the episodes and being a part of their Facebook groups and all that. It's become there's this huge community that surrounds the show. And just being a member of the nation is something that people are really fired up to be. Some of these friends that I've made over the past few years, I've heard on these podcasts. I've run into races. Admittedly, I haven't done a TJM race yet. I promise I won't miss the turkey trot. Shout out to Oscar. So beyond hosting TJM, Scotty's an ultra runner himself with an impressive portfolio of races. Also, outside of that, he's a race director for TJM Racing. There's a bunch of fantastic events that he holds. Outside of the running space, he also hosts a podcast called I Got That on Vinyl, which is really cool. Since I think like we discussed in the back room, me and my pal Gandhi also hosted a music podcast. But before we bring Scotty into this conversation, let's get a little housekeeping out of the way. Friends of the pod, your support means the world to me and everyone at the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network. If you enjoy what we're doing, please like, share, subscribe, rate, review the podcast. Outside of my show, the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network has 8 other great shows. We have Fireside Chats with Jason Bahumandi and Gandhi. Fiery Embers, also hosted by Jason and Om. Running Tales, hosted by my man Craig Lewis across the pond. Shout out to Craig. And this new show, Enduring Minds, hosted by Evan Birch, Jason Bahumandi. And today we had Gandhi on that show. It was fantastic. Om's story is very compelling and inspires me. We have What's in Your Earbuds with me and Om. We don't really talk about running. We talk about some running, mostly music. Almost 7 hours of music on that playlist now. From 22 different people all over the globe. I really, really love this project. We have Caffeinated Coaching with Lori Hauk. Great show. Lori is so much fun to talk with. We have Food Fight Friday with Jason Bahumandi and our friend Craig Lewis from Canada, who also hosts Community Trail Running. It's a great podcast too. Your engagement helps us grow and deliver even more content. So stay tuned. We've got some exciting stuff coming up. And as always, you're a huge part of this community, and we can't do this without you. So without further ado, let's go beyond the finish line with Scotty Kummer. I messed that up. Adam Lee. Sorry, Adam. What's up, Scotty? How's it going?
Hey, how are you? I'm doing great. Winding things down for the end of the year, and wish I could be doing more running right now, but I'm not. But living my best life.
Heck yeah. So, I don't want to box you in. I gave you an introduction. I don't want to box you in anything. So I just want to come right out of the gate, like I always like to do with my guests, and just ask them, who is Scotty Kummer?
I am, a community builder, and I'm a connector person. I think that's kind of the through line of my adult life, or my I would call it like my transcendent life. Once I got to the point where I'm done being a lawyer, I'm done, trying to get the job, trying to get the next, trying to do the next. Now it's, how can I change the world? How can I impact the people around me? And the way that I do that primarily is by coming up with groups, races, podcasts, and connecting and bringing people together so that they can form communities and make friends. And that's basically how 10 Junk Miles started, to bring people together so they don't have to run alone.
Yeah, I love that. I think especially your group, the group runs that you guys do, like you said, it's like you're providing, it's like if you're out alone on the trail, you join this group of people, and you guys aren't always talking about running. You're just talking about whatever, having fun. And I've always kind of dug that. It's been a big deal. Because before I really knew anything about the community, I found your show. So I was just like, oh, wow, there's other people that do this crazy stuff. And so I always kind of appreciated those shows that you put together. And I also shout out to the Sober Trail Running page. I'm pretty sure you started that, and that's a huge page. It's been a big help through my sobriety. I know if you want to touch on that, you can. Your sobriety journey too, but
Sure.
great
Oh, you're
community.
talking about ultra runners in recovery. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, and that was kind of it was a weird thing because in the beginning of that, so I've been sober more than 32 years, and sobriety is a big part of my life. Recovery is a big part of my life. There's a lot of people in trail and ultra running that are involved in recovery, and in the beginning it was me and maybe a few other people that like to talk about our recovery in the context of being an ultra runner. And at some point I said, you know what, we should start a group. And we did, and it was maybe like 5-6 people, and now I want to say there's like a couple thousand people in there, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's one of the groups that I've organized that's been very easy to manage. There's very little controversy, there's very little drama in there. It's just a lot of people supporting each other and talking about their lives, and it's not a 12-step group. It's not a specific to anything. There's people in there that don't go to meetings. There's people in there that still use marijuana. There's people in there that, have all different kinds of backgrounds. But the whole through line is these are people that want to not drink or want to recover from alcohol and talk about their trail running in the context of that. And that group it's really, and the best part about it is you wouldn't know that I have anything to do with that group if you joined it tomorrow, because I'm not in charge. I'm an administrator and I was the founder, but I'm not really running that thing. I'm just letting it run itself.
Yeah, it's pretty autonomous at this point. It's such a good group. Like it's kind of like TJM, where I've seen these people out at races, and it's kind of cool to make those connections. And when I think I shared this with you on when I did Meet the Nation. I was 5 years sober December 1st, and when I first started running, I was just like, I thought maybe I was like alone, like I'm out here doing this crazy thing. I'm a sober runner, and it turns out like almost across the board, you learn very quickly you're not like that unique. But I mean that in like such a great way. It's just like, wow, I'm actually like amongst people that speak the same language and like understand, what I went through, to some capacity anyway. So community builder, I definitely agree with that. And I've got some questions related to that community too. But I got some questions I kind of want to go through first, if that's okay, because I'm
sure.
You've talked about your running story on your podcast, but I just want to take a moment. Like I think it's kind of rare that the mic's probably turned on you. I know you've done you've been a guest on some podcasts too. But I guess for my edification and the listeners at the APN, tell us about your running journey.
Sure. Well, so I was never a runner. In fact, when I meet people now and they knew me when I was a kid, they're like, "When did you run? I don't remember you being a runner." I played a little bit of sports in high school, but I was basically the partier. I was the guy that knew where the party was. I was the guy that had the drugs. I was the fun guy, and usually the first guy to get drunk and throw up at the party, and all of that. And eventually, then I ended up. I went to college for a little while, and then I quit so that I could work in restaurants and party even more. And at some point, I kind of looked around and said, "This isn't really going well, and it's not really going anywhere good." So I decided that I would try life without alcohol. And when I did that, I really figured out that I was an addict and needed help. So in my recovery journey, I end up going to law school. I get a job in a law firm, and at that law firm is a guy who's about a 244 marathoner, and
Wow.
he was like a mentor to me, and at one point encouraged us all to run. Let's all run. And the other people in the firm were kind of lukewarm on running, but we came up with this idea because we all liked going to Las Vegas. We all liked gambling. We represented some casinos. So we said, let's go to Vegas and we'll do the Vegas half marathon. and then the guy who was the fast marathoner, he was going to do the marathon. So we started quote unquote training, which wasn't really too thorough, and we had fun runs, which I thought were not very fun. I was still a 2-pack a day smoker at that time, and we trained up for this half marathon. We went to Vegas. We were all ready to do the half marathon, and then the senior guy at the law firm, he it dawned on him that we're in Vegas, we're partying, and we're gonna have to get up at 4 a.m., 3 a.m. to take a bus out to the middle of the desert. Because now, mind you, this was back when the marathon in Vegas was not cool. It was you ran from Jean, Nevada, back to the airport. You never got anywhere near the strip. No one even knew there was a marathon going on.
Just desert.
So he's like, well, we can get up at 3 a.m. and take a school bus to the middle of nowhere and then jog all day. Or we could just keep partying, gambling, have fun, sleep in, have a brunch, maybe play tennis. And I really wanted to go run this half marathon, and this mentor of mine was going to be really disappointed, but I got pressured into blowing off the half marathon. And eventually, so I was going to get $200 to run the half marathon. He's going to give me $200 as like a reward. He ended up giving me $300 to not run the marathon. And as a young lawyer, when you tell your boss, he's just like, Scotty, I don't understand. You could get up at 3 a.m. and get $200 to run a half marathon, or you can sleep in and get $300. Like, I'm starting to question your judgment if you're thinking about still running this marathon. So I got bullied into not running, but I had done some training, and the bug had bitten me, and that's kind of what led me down the road of I want to do some running. I did in Chicago, we have what's called CARA, it's the Chicago Area Runners Association. I did their circuit races, their 5Ks, their 10Ks, their half marathons. And back in the day here in Chicago, there was like Thursday night races. It was a race every weekend. So I started doing all these short runs, and I was going to do my first marathon. So leading up to it, I did my first half marathon in Chicago, did my first marathon. And in that crowd of people with that aluminum blanket on, I smoked my Marlboros and blew my smoke up, and everybody looked at me like I was the worst person in the world. I had no idea how inappropriate that was. But worked my way up to running marathons, and then eventually I did quit smoking and ran more and more marathons, started to run a couple marathons a year, 3 marathons, 4 marathons. People thought that was crazy back then. Nobody ran more than 1 or 2 marathons. And then we learned that there were ultra marathons, and there was a 50K. So I went at the peak of my marathoning, I did the lakefront 50K. And then I got up the next morning and I ran the Shamrock Shuffle, and everybody thought I was super badass because I could do a 50K and then an 8K the next morning. Which seems silly now when you look back on it. But then that led to eventually I couldn't get faster at the marathon. So I wanted to break 4 hours. That was my big goal. Couldn't do it, kept screwing up. And then, you're like, I'm training for, 4 months, and then I'm just suck, and I'm not getting any better. I'm not getting any faster. Why am I doing this? And then at some point, I kind of gave up. And then I found this book by a guy named Mishka Shubale, who had run a 50-mile race to get sober and to get his life back together. He was like a rock star. So I decided, maybe I could run 50 miles. So I looked at Runner's World, like, are there training plans for this? I found a training plan. I started training. I looked up, I got all, because this is the kind of person I am. I got all the ultra running books. I joined all the Facebook groups. I went on the websites. I run far, It's like I'm going all in. I'm going to learn everything. And I found the local ultra running group. And I went to my first fat ass event, like, where it's like informal, let's all go run. And what they would do is in Chicago here, they would go out to the Illinois Prairie Path, and they would run this 4-mile loop back and forth in Warrenville, and they would do it all night long. They would call it a TGIF. They do it on Friday night, and they'd run till the sun came up. That was their goal. So I went out there, I started running with them, and then in the middle of it, these 2 girls came out of the woods with this pizza, and they said, don't be scared. We're runners too. We just want to give you some pizza. And so they gave me this like hot piece of pizza, and I ran back eating this piece of pizza, and then they were all like drinking beer in the gazebo, and everyone was just like hanging out and having fun. And I thought, these are my people. This is what I want to do. And that's why I fell in love with ultra running.
Man, I love that. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, Ohm from the back room said there's something what we just want to give you some pizza. Two strangers in the woods. Yeah, that'd probably only happen in ultra, right? We're just two people just emerge from the woods. You're just like, yeah, shit, I'll eat this pizza.
I mean,
I love
I'm
that.
a 250-pound guy on a good day, and we got two very attractive women coming out of the woods with pizza for me in the middle of the night. I've had dreams about that. I mean, that is something. If you want to get somebody in a sport, that's how you do it.
Hooked after that. Agreed. Yeah. Hey, that's awesome. So I think that's funny that you mentioned that. Like, you just went all in. You had to like learn everything, sign in for everything, because that kind of speaks to maybe the nature of just like how most ultra runners behave. Right? It's like, and we just want to like maybe I mean I don't want to generalize everybody, but every ultra runner that I've spent time with, it's they ran this like 50K or 50 miler, and the next thing you know, they're just like they're consuming everything trail running, and that's certainly like kind of how I've done it. Once I discover something, I just dive right in, and trail running's done that for me. I didn't get any pizza from the woods. I mean, I hope that happens to me soon. But that would be amazing. Yeah. So yeah. So what outside of that, what do you think that is that you love so much about trail? What's keeping you? I mean, how long has this story been going on? You said you've been sober for. Well, no, wait. Your running started after sobriety, right? So how long have you been running total? Yeah.
I want to say I started running in the late 90s, like 98, 99. My first my first marathon was 2000, no, 90, 99. My first ultra was 2005. So ultra's coming up on 20 years.
20 years.
Running probably about 25 to, 27 years. So it's a long time. I really, there's a lot of things I like about running. First, I like music. We talked about that. And
Yeah.
I love going out running and listening to music. It's like a great vehicle. Sometimes I used to run just to listen to music. I can tell you songs I heard in certain places. I can tell you why I love certain songs because they came on while I was running in a certain place. I'll be in an ultra in the middle of the mountains and I'll come upon a spot and I'll say, last time I was here, this song was playing. I'll remember that. And I have a lot of memories. Like I've talked on the 10 Junk Miles about this a lot, that there was one time I was in San Francisco, staying right outside of San Francisco, the park, Golden Gate Park. And there was, my sister was there for some conference I went with her, and I went running. I'm running every day. I'm going to run. I had to do like a 14 or whatever. And I was going to run to the Golden Gate Bridge. I could kind of see the bridge, and I'm like, yeah, I want to get, that would be so awesome to like run. And I couldn't get there. And I just kept trying. And I'm at like 22, 23 miles, and I still am nowhere near this, and then finally at some point I get to the bridge. I get on the bridge. I start running across the bridge. And the song that came on was Sheryl Crow, Soak Up the Sun. And like every time I hear that song, I'm running across the Golden Gate Bridge for the first time, looking around, just love, and like those moments. And this is because I'm an addict, right? And because I'm an alcoholic, and I have a lot of skeletons in my closet. But in those moments, all there is me and the scene and the song. I'm not paying the mortgage. I'm not late with my bills. I'm not trying to make somebody happy. I'm not thinking about, anything other than this is awesome. And you're just living it and just love it and you feel it. You feel that song all the way down to your toes, and that's one of the things I love about running, is that music and running can do that to me together. The other part, there's three parts. The other part of it is that as a person that struggles with alcohol and addiction and things like that, it's a time when I can turn my brain off. Even if I'm not listening to music or having a great race or whatever the case may be, I'm very present and I'm very attracted to things where all I can think about is that thing, that there's relief in that because, I mean, like even me today, think about it, I have, 4 different podcasts. I got a law firm, I got a wife, I got a dog, I got bills to pay, I got all this stuff going on, race directing. But when I'm running, it's just that's all I'm doing is running, and that's great. And then I guess the last part of it is the community part, the bringing people together part. Like once in a while, I'll be scrolling through the Facebook and I'll see, 4 people like a couple of years ago, they all went and did the Berlin Marathon, and then they all finished wearing their Run TJM shirts together. And I look at these people and I think I helped those people get to know each other. I helped those people decide to go do stupid stuff together. And now they're in Germany and they're wearing this shirt for the podcast that, and you're just like,
Yeah.
Running's great. There's not a lot of other activities that would do that where these people all over the world that are friends because of running. So those are the things that I really like about it.
Yeah, I love that. You just said a lot of things that really hit with me. Because first, for some reason I think, I'll be like kind of struggling with running, like it's just running. But then you think, wow, it's so much bigger than that. Like it's like you just mentioned. I mean, I've made connections with TJM people. And I'm still, I've been listening to the podcast for a while, but I kind of lingered on the Facebook groups because whatever, that's my own thing. Like I kind of felt like an imposter. We don't, obviously we don't have to go down that road. But when I finally started like engaging with people, like Tom Clancy and Oscar, shout out to those guys. I've seen those guys places, and it's so cool. Yeah, it's so much bigger than just running. And it's something else that you said that really struck me because, I guess I'll share this with my music moment with you too. So I was training for my first 100K, and I was on a training run, my normal route. I run this, cool little 6-mile trail, and I was like really, really struggling. And this song came on by Brent Cobb called Black Creek. And I'm not like a big country guy, but I just let Spotify do its thing. And it's like the first time that like you said, you felt music down your toes. Like I just had that moment. I just stopped and I just kind of like soaked everything in. And I was just like, I think I'm going to be able to finish this race. I just had like that moment where it's like, it's going to be okay. Like if I don't, then whatever, who gives a shit? But yeah, so every time I run that trail and go up that climb on that trail, I remember having that like moment where it's like, all right, it's going to be okay. Like it doesn't, when, finish or not, it doesn't matter. And something else you said that I really, really agree with is it forces you to be present, because that's been like a big deal. Someone who also struggles, I'm in recovery forever. That's kind of a thing that we all agree on for the most part. In trail running, I'm always kind of like looking for the next thing. What's next? Next guest, next article. Chasing a promotion, or what bills are due. Kind of like you said, and like running just kind of it forces you to be like right where you are. And so you said a lot of things that really, really resonated. And yeah, it was just amazing.
Well, and I want to be clear about the fact that the music, it's a two-way street. You might hear a song that's so great that it makes you run better, or you might have a run to a like I remember one time I came around, Chicago. I come around that Shed Aquarium, that concrete thing on the bottom, and it's like, I'm doing like a 20-mile run. I'm at like 18. I'm just over it. And then all of a sudden, Brandy or a Fine Girl comes on, and I just kind of get into the and then
Yeah.
and then that song became a great song because it put me in a mood in a run. So you can, a run can make a song great, or a song can make a run great. That goes both ways.
Yeah, true. Yeah. It's just like we were talking about the Who in the background. Like I think running has made that so great. Yeah, I totally agree with that. We're gonna have to have you on our What's in Your Earbuds podcast. Our playlist is very interesting. It's like from everywhere too. There's some stuff, I think it's like Greek pop music or something. It's been so cool, like sharing music with people that would otherwise be strangers. And like music is just kind of like this universal language that we can all agree that music, for the most part, we can all agree that music is pretty awesome, so it doesn't matter where it comes from. So,
Yeah.
So cool. Thank you for sharing that with us, your running journey. Hey, so you sent me a picture of you at the IT 100. So what'd you think about the IT-100? Did you run one of the muddy years? I keep hearing about the muddy years. I'm so glad I didn't get to experience that.
I ran in the with the old course in a very muddy year back when it was in the spring and not the fall. And I ran in shoe sucking deep, the kind of mud that you can't stand on because you start to slide off the trail, slide to the side. It was it was colossal. It was just terrible. And that's why that picture, I'm just covered in mud. And it's funny, at the end of that race, I took a bag and I put my shoes, my shorts, which had my wedding ring in it, and my shirt all in a bag to take to the car, and somehow or another it got thrown away. And so that's like the story of how I lost a bunch of really good running gear too. But yeah, that I ran that in the super mud.
Yeah, I think I was like fresh off that DNF, and then I think you had sent me that picture after, and I was just like, all right, you saw, it was just like a picture, which, I mean, no one's seeing it. It's what I used for the promo card. I was like, that was a picture of like, you have been through some stuff. So,
yeah, well, and then I had a buddy who's like a food critic in Fort Wayne come out with his family to see me finish the 100 because they had never seen a race, and then he took me aside. He's like, "Is that what they do with these?" Because like they took my shoes and socks off, and then all these people crowded around and took pictures of my feet and took pictures like and they're like, "Why is everybody so fascinated with your feet?" And it was just like, because my feet were just destroyed from the mud,
just jacked up.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah, probably not the best like PR for like anyone on the outside. Like, should I actually do this? Probably not.
Yeah, it wouldn't have made anybody. Although that picture is pretty awesome.
It is pretty awesome. Yeah, I won't lie. I was just like, all right, that's a pretty legit picture. So thanks for sending me that. So I'm a podcast host, obviously, right? That's why we're here. I have a lot of questions about being a podcast host. I'm still new. I look up to TJM. I like. I would say you're probably one of the first podcasts that ever captured like, hey, we're going to talk to like everybody. People that you run into at Run. I mean, your gang show is just your friends. Like, I just think it's so cool. I love the Meet the Nation. It's obviously, it's got to be one of the first of its kind. I don't think anybody else does that. So all that to say, I look up to TJM. It's kind of like, to me, it's kind of like the blueprint for how I think a podcast should go. Not that I don't love the elites. I think it's cool. I think the elites are awesome, but maybe it doesn't necessarily, like, I'll listen to podcasts about Courtney Dauwalter, like Jim Walmsley. Like, I love that shit. Like, but it's never captured me like hearing, about, Tom from Chicago or, Beth from Milwaukee or whatever. So,
but we've also had those elites on too.
Yeah. I mean, you've had Camille on. You've had
we've had Sage Kennedy. We've had Ellie Greenwood and Trayson. I mean,
Gene Carnazes.
We have lots of famous people too. But I think that what I like to do is I like to talk to the famous people about things that are relatable to the everyday runner. Like, again, I want to bring it back to the. I don't have Camille on and say, let's talk about how many gels you ate and what kind of shoes you wore, your workout plan and your cross training. It's more of just like, what's it like to be you, and let's talk about your life and why. Who are you and why are you that way, rather than what have you just done. And I think that was. It grew out of a discontent that I had, and you got to understand, 10 years ago, there was Talk Ultra, there was Marathon Talk in the UK, and there was Trail Runner Nation.
Yeah.
And Ultra Runner Podcast. That's it. And all of those shows had kind of the same formula. It was just like, have a guy on, you just won the blank. How did you train for the blank? Walk me through your race. Okay, fine. That's it. Come back next week. It was the same show. And I loved it. I loved I listened to every single Ultra Runner podcast, every single Trail Runner Nation. I loved it. But I thought there could be more. I thought there could be something different in that, in that gang show format. Nobody was doing that. And that's kind of like a through line too through my life, is when I say, what would be awesome? I don't care what everybody else is doing, but what would be awesome? And what would be awesome is if we could get that conversation that we have at mile 48 of a long run with your friends where you're all just talking about stupid stuff or somebody's a little bit drunk or whatever. If we could get that, put it in a bottle, put it in a podcast so you could listen to it. And then, if you're Jada Freer living in Washington, the middle of nowhere, and you don't have any running friends to go run your 20 miler with, you take us with. And then we become the running friends that you wish that you had in your community. Nobody else was doing that. Now, a lot of people do it now. There's a lot of gang shows. And also, I think podcasts felt the freedom to get a little longer as a result of what we were doing, because nobody was doing, 3-hour, 4-hour interviews of people until we came around either. And that's not the reason why we did it, but it's an observation that some of the things that we did must have hit a chord because it caught on, and then everybody and their mother has a gang show now. And there's gang shows that grew out of the 10 Junk Miles community too. There's you said 100 miles. There's the Where's the Finish, Cultura out on the East Coast. They kind of came from us a little bit. There's this Trailing Off, this new one with Ori Frazier. So and I don't mind that at all, because I think that it's good that there's more of it, and I don't think that podcasts are a fungible good. I think that, like, if you like a new podcast, like if I like this new podcast that you're talking about with the what's in your earbuds, I'm not saying, well, I'm going to delete these other 3. I'm just adding it too. So the more shows, the better. Come on. The only thing that I don't like, this is kind of like inside baseball podcasting, is I don't like sometimes the fact that, for example, David Roach broke the Leadville record, and I've always found him personally interesting, and I thought, oh, this is a great time for me to interview him. So I sent him a message like, oh yeah, let's get together, we'll do an interview. And then you look, and he's on the Rich Roll show, he's on the Debo show, he's on this, and you're just like, well, I don't want to be the 19th guy to interview this guy this month. So, we'll just wait and I'll interview him sometime later. But, that's the only downside to that, is that sometimes the guests are, oversaturated, and then, it'll prevent me from bringing somebody on that I really want to talk to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you even said this, and I listened to that episode. You even mentioned, you talked to Camille for like how many hours and never even talked about running. So I think that's not a lot anyways. So I thought that was kind of cool. Like, that kind of just speaks to like kind of what you were saying, but
well, and some of those people, that was back in the day when they would come to my house. Camille was like staying here when we did that interview. We actually sat down and we talked for 2 hours. Then we were going to go running. We went to the lakefront. There was just too much snow. It was cold. And we were like, screw it. So we went and had Chinese food. And then we came back. And then we did like 3 more hours after that. But I like that idea of them coming and staying with me, because then you're kind of getting them in your element and you're getting them comfortable, and they're having it's a very different interview when I get them face to face. And I think the best example is if you listen to Ann Tracing, like the interview I did of her. Nobody's done an interview like that, and it was just because she was sitting here and she was vulnerable, and we talked about a lot of really cool stuff. So I like those the best.
What was it like having Ann Tracing like in your house? You're just
It was the first time I ever told my wife, so and so's coming and they need the guest room, and she was like, "Wait a second, the Ann Tracing?"
Like the Ann Tracing.
The Ann Tracing.
Wow.
She sent me an email the other day. It's like, so this is kind of like the weird, you hear the story. Here's this guy, he's smoking cigarettes in the finishing corral of the Chicago Marathon, no running talent, and now Ann Tracing's sleeping in my guest room. Like, how did my life get here? And I swear to you that like about a month ago, less than a month ago, I got an email from Ann Tracing that she was thinking about me with a picture of like a bear in her front yard or something. And she's kind of dropped out of the community. She's kind of gone quiet. And so I get this email from her and I'm just like, what is going on? And I'm getting, that she's thinking about me. 5 years later, she's thinking about me, And I sent her back an email, and then she wrote a poem about my dog that had died a couple years ago. It's just like, so grateful that I get to do things like that I have those kind of interactions in my life. And that, they're very surprising. But understand, Joe, this is all an accident. None of this was on purpose. I didn't get up one morning and say, I want to be a podcaster. I want to be a popular figure in the running world or a race director. All of this is on accident. All of this was just like a series of bad decisions that resulted in something happening that, and like for podcasting, we didn't start out thinking people were going to listen. We didn't think we were going to change anything. We weren't trying to make money. It was just like, I had this idea, and there was a guy standing next to me that said, and this is why it's good to have running friends. He said, that sounds like a great idea. You should do it. All right, fine. Let's do it. We go in my basement, we start doing it. And then one day, the one day that it sunk in, see that flag back there?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we get mail. I let people mail stuff to us, and we just open it on the show. Mail me anything you want. I'll open it on the show. Someone sent that flag, and they flew the flag in combat for us. And there's a certificate to 10 junk miles because it mattered to them so much that they flew a flag in combat. And man, and we're all like crying. It was like the end of the show, and we just forgot about that package. I'm like, oh, what's in that thing? We open it up. And then we're just like, we got to keep doing this. This matters to people. And we never thought it would matter to anyone. That never even thought about that. But, and you have to think about that as a podcaster too, or anybody that's creating anything or doing anything, is that even if, and podcasters always, I know I'm on a rant now. I should tone it down a little bit. But I know there's some podcasters out there that they're like, well, we only have like 40 listeners, or we only have like 50 listeners. And I always just say, that's 50 people that are taking an hour out of their day to listen to what you have to say. If 50 people showed up at Joe Harden's house and you like, if there's a knock on the door, you open the door, there's 50 people in the front yard and they're like, talk to me for an hour. That would be overwhelming.
Yeah, that'd be huge, right?
It's not a small thing. So, think about that. If you want to create something or do something, or, just remember, it could change the world, and it's all on accident.
Man, that's amazing. Yeah, I'll definitely keep, because same thing. It's like maybe like something I might publish or like might get only a few views, but like you said, it's like someone gave you that their time. Like that's something you don't get back. So I certainly like that you said that, because I try to take that like seriously and to an extent. But yeah, first of all, that's amazing.
And the flip side of that is those creators in your life, those podcasters that you listen to, those race directors, go up to them and look them in the eye or send them an email and say, what you do makes a difference in my life. Because they don't realize that either. There's guys that come on the record show that do music podcasts that they're always bitching that nobody's listening to their show. And I'm just like, you don't understand, man. I've listened to all 600 episodes. This is important to me. This makes a big difference in my life. And when you tell people that, it makes them happy. It makes them want to create more.
So basically, you kind of answer what it come to be. Like, so, like, when was a day you're just like, all right, like, that's it. Like, I'm gonna get a microphone, and it was just that like happen chance conversation you had on the run with some guy on, like, that is absolutely mind blowing to me right now.
It culminated. So I used to listen to the Adam Carolla show, and Adam Carolla used to have a news girl named Allison Rosen. And she would have a segment where she would tell the news. And Allison Rosen started her own podcast separate from Carolla. Now, she's been fired and gone for a decade probably, but she had her own side show called Allison Rosen is Your New Best Friend. And what that show was a gang show of like A-list, B-list, C-list, D-list, like let's say like R-list celebrities, like way down on the bottom, just people that are in Hollywood. And they would get together at her house. They would do a show. They had inside jokes. They talked about their lives. And I got hooked into the show. And then I was listening to it in the car. And one day my wife said, why do we listen to this? Like, why is this? Why do we care about this? And I said, I don't know. It's like they're my friends. I listen to the show. I get to know them. I know their jokes. I know their history. So that was step one. Okay. Step two, I had started the Ultra Runners in Recovery. I had started the Flatlanders. I had started a bunch of different groups. And people had seen me on group runs with my friends saying, here's me and my friends. Here's me and 50 people doing a fat ass together. Here's me and my 8 friends who decided we're going to run, to the shrimp place and back, or whatever goofy stuff we came up with. And people would say, oh, I wish I had friends that could do that with me. I wish I had a group of friends like that. So then you take number one, this show with these, I could get interested in friends just talking because it's interesting. 2, we have running, and people that are looking for running friends, put them together. And so I'm on this run with this guy, Corey Fain. And I said, I have this idea. And he just looked at me and said, we should just do it. Let's do it. And we got our microphones. We got all the equipment. We came to my house. We did it. And I didn't think anybody would listen to it at all. And all of a sudden, hundreds of people listened to the show. I was like, well, this is great, And then slowly but surely, it just built and built. And then at some point, I said, there's some people in the ultra running world, and you probably can think of some people like this, but there are people that I don't know anything about them, but I know they're everywhere. Every time I look at Facebook, every race I go to, they're in the ultra running magazines. Like there's this Asian guy, Chiping Fu. Who the hell is this guy? Why is he at every West Coast race that I've ever been to? Why is everybody always talking about him? I'm always seeing him commenting. What's his story? You know what? I should interview him because he's not a winner. He's not the champion. He's not. But you know what? I bet you other people wonder what his story is too. And what I found is that Chiping Fu had an amazing story. He lived in San Francisco. He took buses to Lake Tahoe to do 100-mile races. He had to support a family. He just had this amazing, interesting story. And everyone has an amazing, interesting story like that. And so those are the kind of people that I wanted to interview. And I interviewed a lot of those. That's what turned into the long run. Meet the Nation came about because of the pandemic. When the pandemic happened, I thought, what can I do? Everyone's scared. We don't have our community. We can't run anymore. We don't have this feeling of belonging anymore. How can I help? What can I do? And I thought, well, what I can do is I can podcast. So I will do a podcast interview every day while we're cooped up in our houses, so that every day they have something to look forward to. Here's another podcast with so-and-so. So every day for probably 90 days, I did a Meet the Nation interview of someone, put it up, published it the same day. I reached out to a lot of people like Jamil. I said, man, you got to be shitting, like your races. What are you going to do with your life? Maybe I can help you. What do you do? Oh, you're doing a virtual? Okay. Let's do a Meet the Nation. We'll talk about your virtual thing. We'll spread the word. So a lot of that kind of stuff. And then a lot of people that are in the races and stuff. And then slowly but surely people got to know each other. And we started a book club, and we had a record club for a while. We had a Slack channel, and, and a Facebook group, and, and all of that kind of grew out of the shared experience of enjoying the podcast. And I don't want to say they're not fans of me necessarily. I don't have much to do with it, but it's the group, it's the idea of who we are and how we connect with each other that, so that's where, and then when the pandemic ended, I kept doing those shows once a week. I do those. So those are the three shows I do. I do a gang show or a long run every week, and I do a Meet the Nation every week. They kind of flip flop, and I've tried to be somewhat regular on that. I've probably missed 3 weeks maybe in the last 10 years. I think we've done about 800 10 junk miles shows, and we're now like 5.5 million downloads total. So
wow,
over 5 million. Yeah.
Wow. It's cool. Like I love of course I got to be on the Meet the Nation, which was really cool. And it's funny is I've had people like, hey man, I listened to your Meet the Nation, or I actually had someone like people reach out to me on Strava, which I thought was kind of cool. And like the Flatlanders, I kind of do stuff on, I post a little bit on there too. So that's kind of cool. It's like, it's also kind of like a way outside of, like this, the podcast, like you just see people at races. You're like, hey, I saw your episode, whatever, on Meet the Nation. So it's like,
yeah.
So it's kind of cool.
And those long run people too, they come to the race,
long run, yeah.
And they're like, oh, I listened to your long run. Can I take my picture with you? Oh my God. So then people will come and they'd be like, oh my God, I didn't even think about this. But the people that are running the race, not all of them, because some people, they finish the Badger, they don't even know who I am. They don't even know what 10 check miles means. There's like, what's that? What's, they just did the race.
Just some guy that hugs them at the end.
Yeah, why are you hugging me too?
That's so cool. Yeah, it's so yeah, I love those. I love the gang shows. Those are my favorites. Like if I felt like I already, I'm gonna say Oscar's name again because it's been so cool meeting Oscar. But it's like I felt I knew so much about him already. I was just some dude, but we got to share some pretty serious miles together this last summer. So it's been cool getting to know him. So
He's coming over Sunday.
he's coming over Sunday.
Yeah, we have
I
a gang
told
show
him
Sunday.
I committed to hopefully he talks about Jackson, but I committed to the turkey trot. I refuse to miss that next year. This year I'll actually not like I make you've probably seen maybe, but I make finisher and podium awards for a lot of stuff lately. So I like drug my feet on getting stuff done for the last race. So I was just like trying to hammer out stuff very, very last minute this year. So basically I was like working on Thanksgiving to get all that done too. But
Oof.
yeah, rough, right?
Yeah, it's
So
that time of year.
that time of year, right? So I mean, you've already covered, like you already said, but you couldn't imagine it would become what it's become. So TJM, the podcast, I need to get into your race directing. I'm really curious about that too. So all right, so you're podcasting. How did that like dovetail, like segue into race directing? Like what made you decide to do that?
Well, I read an article about a tunnel up in Wisconsin, and I dragged my wife to go see it, and she was kind of reluctant. She's like, "Why? This is going to be lame. Why are we trying to find this tunnel?" And then we found this tunnel, and I was like, "This tunnel is awesome, and it's on a trail that I think is awesome. We should have a race up here." So I started going up there, running on the trail, falling in love with the trail, and then eventually said, "You know what? Let's put on a race." And because I'm dumb, we put on a 100-mile, 100K, 50-mile, 50K marathon, half marathon for the very first race that I ever raced directing. Put it on Ultra Sign Up. People sign up, bought all the stuff. Didn't really know what we were doing. Kind of made it up as we went. And again, my business model is what would be awesome. What would I want to race? Now, I understand I have the benefit of not having to make my mortgage payment from race directing. You know, if we break even, it's not the end of the world. If we make money, that's great. If we lose money, I may be getting a little bit of trouble. But, at the end of the day, I'm not sweating it over am I going to make money. I'm more wanting it to be awesome. So everything we did, we said, what would be awesome? Finish line beer. Let's have beer at the finish. Let's not have drink coupons. Let's just put a keg at the finish. Let everybody drink as much as they want. Let's let the townspeople drink, the families, the crew people. Let's just put beer at the finish. We'll get good beer. Let's get New Glarus, Spotted Cow, kegs. Great, Let's have camping at the start finish and let's make it free. Just let people camp there. Let's have free pizza at the finish line. Let's not charge people for pictures. Let's just give them free pictures. Let's put porta potties at every aid station and let's clean them in the middle of the race. We'll have the lady come back out and clean them and refresh them. Let's get feminine hygiene products and make 10 junk miles. And my wife's looking at me like I'm nuts when I come up with this idea. 10 junk miles brand. Nobody was doing this, by the way, when we did this. 10 junk miles branded feminine hygiene product packs, and we'll put them in the bathrooms at the aid stations for the women. That would be awesome, So we did that's how we just did everything that we did, and it just turned out really well. And then we said, well, let's do another race, and then let's add another. Now we have 3 races. We have that August, the big race, the 100-mile all the way down to half marathon. In the Memorial Day weekend, we have a 50-mile, 50K half marathon, same place, not the same trail, but it's the same place. And then in the fall, we have the last dot standing, which is a last person standing, 24-hour and 48-hour race. And I think that's enough. I think that's enough for. I might someday add a marathon up there, go in the other direction on the trail. I've really wanted to do that for a while because it's a pretty trail that nobody goes to. But over that period of time now, I have a second community that I call home, and we go up there. We know where I got a Christmas card from the police just today, from the Belleville police. We go up there and we do good things for their community. We donate money to the trail. We donate money to the Shop with a Cop program. But more importantly, people buy groceries and people get gas and people, invest in those communities the weekend while they're up there. And the whole town says, we can't wait for the ultra runners to come because it's going to be a great weekend for all of us. And that really helps. It really helps that community. And it's a place that's really near and dear to my heart. And I call it home now too. But that's, again, I just wanted to see a tunnel. And then the next thing you know, I'm like the unofficial mayor of Belleville, you know? It
the key to
just happens.
the key to the city. I mean, I love that. So it's like you kind of have like this recurring theme. It's like kind of happened by accident too. It's like, so, and you're just, I mean, it's like the same with the podcast. You're just like, we should do something that's awesome, right? So like,
It's you know what, Joe? It's the same with all of life. All of life is like this. And if you're stuck in your own head and bitching about your situation, you don't see the opportunities you have to do something teeny tiny and to change someone's life for the better, you know? And I don't
yeah,
care if it's catching the t-shirt at the basketball game and giving it to the little kid, or holding the door open for somebody, or you see someone that's struggling and you're trying to help them or be nice to them. But every moment, you have a moment where you can do something really, really little and it can help someone a lot. And if you get in the habit of doing that, at some point you feel it, and I mean, when people ask me, and it sounds hokey, but I say it all the time, I want to change the world. That's what I'm working on, changing the world, you know, changing the world around me for the better. And all you have to do is want to do it and try a little bit, and you can do that.
yeah. I love that. Doesn't sound hokey at all, and I love that. Yeah, it's just a little like it's just the little things, right? That kind of that you don't think I'm making a big impact, but it's like you said, you go back to Ann Tracy and you have like this one-on-one conversation with her, and maybe that must have meant something. That one-on-one conversation must have meant something to her, because what you said all these years later, she emails thinking about you. So that makes
Well,
perfect sense.
or like, let's say that I'd send the email to you. Like, let's say one of your fans sends you an email tomorrow, and they say, "Joe, I just want you to know I listen to every show you do. It makes a big difference in my life. You matter to me. Thanks for doing what you do. I really appreciate." That's going to change the trajectory of your day. You
Oh,
know, that's a
absolutely, yeah,
great day for you. It's like you matter, and what you're doing matters. And telling people that is, you know, tell it to your friend, tell it to the, you know, the mailman or whoever it is. But every day you have a chance to do that, and if you can, just nail it.
oh, I love that. Yeah, um, man, I'm gonna have to do last. Not to change the subject, but I'm gonna have to do last dot standing this year. I feel bad that I've been like such a big fan of TJM and still haven't done one of your races, but
That's my favorite race to put
I've
on.
heard I've heard so much good about it. And I know Chris Lubecki, and I listened to the episode where you talked to him, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna do dots. I ran with Chris at Grind on the Grid last year. He's like such a chill dude that just like absolutely eats miles for breakfast. So
Oh.
if I know he'll do it again, right? So if
So
anything,
he just did one in Ohio
yeah, and
back.
he absolutely destroyed it. It's he's like the coolest guy. Like, yeah.
So
So
that race director, I was at the Bucks game. I got a message from her with a picture of him. She said, "You know this guy?" And I said, "Yeah, I know that guy." It's like they're down to the last three. He's like, he's killing. I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "Here's what you got to do. You got to give him toast. Just give him some toast. It'll make him
give him
so happy. Just give him toast." So she gave him toast. She goes, "This is from Scott Kummer." She took a picture of him. He's smiling. He's eating his toast, and just like, it was awesome, you know.
what was so wild about watching him, I think he ran 116 at Grind on the Grid, is, I mean, he might have felt different, but he looked exactly the same each lap. He was just like chipping away, chipping away. And whenever you talk with him, he was just like, I just really like that. I was really cool getting to know him. So, and
He
it'd be
got
fun to meet.
better. He got better as the day went on for us. He started
Did
out
he?
saying, I don't think it's going to happen," and then by the end, he's like, I'm not stopping." You know.
Yeah, I won't lie. I was keeping track of, was that Ohio Backyard? Was that one of Anetta's races?
Yeah, that was another
Yeah,
Zapatel. Yeah.
yeah. I was keeping tabs to see how Chris is doing. There's some like, impressive runners at that too. So shout out to everybody that ran it, because I can't remember what Chris finished at, like 130 something. I can't remember
Yeah, I
now.
don't remember.
Pretty impressive. So
She never
yeah,
circled back after the toast. That was all I remember.
that was it. So all right. So God, I don't know what I was going to go with that. So I have some questions about race directing.
Sure.
What is something I get to spend some time with race directors. I've been kind of, I mean, I'm sure every ultra runner and podcaster thinks they should direct a race. So I've been kind of toying around the idea of like maybe one day I'd like to direct a race. So I like to ask race directors questions. What is probably one of your like favorite things about being a race director? Something that maybe, or like something behind the scenes that maybe we wouldn't see. Maybe shed some light on that, I guess.
Well, I mean, the obvious thing that I love the most about being a race director is the finish line experience, and
Mhm.
that a lot of those people, and I mean, and that's just because of the kind of race director I am. There are race directors that don't go to their finish line. There's race directors that don't want to congratulate people or hug them against their will, like I tend to. But that so standing there, and then let's say that you've been a 10 Junk Miles fan forever, and then you came and did the race, and then like some of those people at the finish line, they kind of look at you a little teary eyed, and they're just like, you know what? I never would have even thought to do this if it wasn't for you, and that it's because of you that I'm here, whatever they say, and then they cry, and I give them a hug, and and then I kind of like sashay them back to the start finish thing, and then I turn around and my niece will put another award in my hand and say, 100K finish, and then I got to do it again. And I do that for about 20 hours straight, just being in
Wow.
somebody's moment, and them being in mine. But the thing that I love, the thing that I really love is like, let's say Arun, he comes to the finish line. He's got his shirt off. It's the Badger. He's just covered in sweat. He's this big sweaty dude who's just finishing. And I go in for the hug, and he doesn't want the hug. He like kind of moves away. Like, who's this guy? Why is he? I don't want this guy hugging me. This is. And then when I hug him, I can feel him kind of tense up. Like this is wrong. And then they just let go because they really did need the hug and they didn't know it, and they just kind of collapse. And you're just like that. Like you turned him. You made him into a hugger in
That's
that
the moment.
moment. Those are the best. Those are the
That's the best
absolute
moments.
best. Yeah.
Oh man, I love that. So yeah, something else I'm curious about is, obviously there's a ton of stuff that goes into those races outside of the actual day of. So what I'm curious about, what's something like an aspect of race directing that maybe most people wouldn't know? Like I just sign up for them, right? I show up, I see the course is marked, the aid stations are up. What's something like behind the scenes that maybe most people wouldn't realize that you have to like do or like prepare for the race or like go through or outside of just the actual day of?
It's a lot more like being a project manager than anything else. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of things to remember. There's a lot of waking up in the middle of the night wondering if you did it or not, especially the more you do it. Like the first time I went and got insurance for each race, that was a big deal, and it was hard, it was complicated. Now, I do all three races together. Like January, I get back from Christmas and it's like, okay, it's time to race direct. And then I'll go and I got to do all my insurance. I got to get all my porta potties. I got to get all my um, dumpsters. I got to get my permits. I got to talk to all my different agencies. I sent out a communication to the sheriff, to the police, to the fire, to all the different towns that are on the trail, plus the DNR. This is my plan. These are my dates. Does anybody have an issue with that? And then it's okay. Now I got to start getting my permits. Got to get my paperwork in. Got to order my stuff. You got to order those bags for the people. You got to get the awards. You got to get the hat, the swag, the stickers. Do we have enough shirts? Do we got to add more things to our store? Like our merchandise store.
Yeah.
You're getting the people that are signing up. You got their sock size. You got to get your socks. You got to get the sponsor. Because we give a lot of swag. I don't know if you know about this,
Yeah.
but like if you sign up for the Sugar Badger, you get like a very nice kind of like drawstring bag, a pair of socks, a buff, a patch, usually like another gift of some kind, plus a really nice shirt. It's like everybody gets the swag and they're like, wow, I can't believe you give everybody all this swag. But that's, we have to start ordering that. We have to design it. We have to decide, are we changing the design this year? Are we sticking with the same metal? We got to get the metals made. We got to get the buckles ordered. Sometimes there's like a long lead time on that kind of stuff. And everything's kind of coming in. And then we have to like take it up to the shed. Because now remember, my race is in a different town. So
Oh yeah, yeah.
I have to take all that stuff up to the other side of, up to Wisconsin and put it in a storage shed. And then we have to work on stuff while we're up there, organize all those aid stations. Each aid station has like 5 or 6 bins, plus, they have a speaker, they have a tent, they have tarps, they have a garbage can. Like, and you have to get all that organized together for each aid station so you can stage that all so that hopefully when race day comes, things are ready to roll. You got to pick up your groceries, you got to send out your aid station stuff, and then packet pickup is coming. And it starts maybe March, it gets kind of intense. And then when the last dot standing ends, it's kind of like all the air is let out and everything is
Big weight
everything
off
is
your
good in my
shoulder.
world. But it's a lot of driving back and forth to my storage locker. It's a lot of working in the locker, a lot of buying equipment, fixing equipment, doing inventory, figuring out what we need, going to the store, supplementing the stuff, communicating with all of your aid station captains, getting them on board, finding out what their plan is. Do they need you to get some food? There's just and all of this stuff overlaps with each other, and all of it has to be done for every race all year long. And I would say that probably from February 1 till the last dot standing ends is just it's emails, it's calls, it's making the race book, it's checking the ultra sign up, it's worrying about am I going to have enough money, booking the buses to drive the people to places. There's just an endless supply of things to do, and it's just and a lot of really just waking up in the middle of the night and being scared, like, oh my god, who's doing the drop bags? Did we talk about that? And then you figure out that you got it. But that happens all the time.
Oh wow. It sounds like kind of amazing, but also pretty terrifying at the same time.
I swear to God, so by the time race weekend comes, my wife, who's really good at all this stuff, she'll say, "You need to let the volunteers work today because you worked all year. You need to just be." I'm just like hugs and PR at that point. Don't she? Because like if it's interesting. I will have put up this interview with Sherpa John, who he has like 15 races. And we talked about the whole idea that like I carry these boxes with 6 gallons of water, and each gallon of water is 7 pounds. So 7 times 6, that's 42 pounds per box. And I take it all from the grocery store to the trailer, from the trailer to the shed, from the shed to the trailer, from the trailer to the aid station. So 42 times 6 or 7 times 3 races a year times hundreds and hundreds of boxes of this water. Like, it all adds up over time, and it screws up your back. And now Sherpa John, his back is permanently screwed up from all of the physical labor that we have to do. But it's like you don't think about that one. You think, oh, it's that one thing. It's not the one thing. Like if I'm at the finish line and I drop something, I might say my wife, she hires someone, and I don't mean hire. She gets a volunteer assigned to just be my handler all weekend long, so that like sometimes I get lost. Like you finish, and then I'm over at the pizza with you talking about your race, and then someone else is finishing. So the handler's got to go get me and be like, Scotty, we got another. But sometimes like I'll drop something and that person will pick it up, and someone will be like, "What, are you so lazy? Somebody else has got to pick stuff up." I'm like, you don't understand. If I pick up 9,000 things today, I'm going to be screwed up. Like my feet are sore at the end of the weekend just from standing at that stupid finish line.
I
So
can
it's
imagine.
it's a whole thing. Like if you went and you watched it, you would say, how does all this happen? It seems impossible. There's this moment like when the 100 mile starts, it's like when you're putting the ketchup on the plate and the ketchup just starts to come out a little bit, and then all of a sudden it just, and then we have 60 volunteers, we have hundreds of runners, we have cities and municipalities and aid station captains. Everything's just in action, and I don't have anything to do with it anymore. I'm just like watching it all
Yep.
and saying, how did this all happen? But it's a very weird experience.
Yeah, I could only imagine. It sounds like chaos, but I bet
It is sheer chaos.
I bet it's
Sheer
kind of
chaos.
cool, like when you're just doing hugs, just to kind of see how like the synergy kind of comes together and unfolds.
Oh,
Probably
I look
like
around and I think, how did this happen? And the people come and they say, I can't believe how great you are at this. And you put on this, and I'm just like, you don't understand, man. I'm just hugging people. That's all. Just hugging people.
well, thanks for like an inside, like a peek behind the curtains on that. Um, well, Scotty, I don't want to take up like a whole lot of your time. And I've really enjoyed having you on here, and I'm gonna have to have you back on because I still have another page of questions that I would like to ask you if we ever get a
That's
chance
because
to
I
do this
talk too
again.
much, right?
Not at all, man. This honestly, this has been amazing. First of all, I was just like, wow, Scotty Kummer said yes to being my podcast, so that was really awesome. And I've been listening to you talk for a long time on your podcast, so I had a whole lot of questions. Um, so that just makes me want to have you on again sometime down the road. Yeah, this has been amazing. Oma agrees. This has been a great conversation.
Do you got something on there that nobody's ever asked me?
Oh man, I don't. I was so I won't lie. I tried to deep dive into some other pods you do and try to find something just like what's gonna get them, But I do have something that maybe I don't know if you've been asked this before, and it actually would be like some closing words of advice. I don't know if you've ever been asked that before, but if you had some closing words or advice, what would that be?
For what?
Just for like anybody in general, like if you just had some like closing words, like advice to give somebody, what would that be?
I think that it's sort of like the same advice I give to people who want to do podcasting, and this applies to race directing too. And that's you gotta be consistent, authentic, and engage with people. Like those are the three things that I think that we need more of, and that and in terms of building a community. And I definitely think that the sport needs a lot more of that. It needs more concentrating on who people are rather than what they've done. And there's a lot of people you can look up to because they're the fastest runner. And believe me, in the last 20 years, I've heard a lot of, you don't understand, this is the next big person. This is the greatest of all time. And they come and then they go, and then you're still there. So make some friends that'll stick around, because that's really the fun part about the sport, is doing it with somebody else, helping someone else, crewing them, pacing them, doing that little thing to help change the world. That is definitely, when I'm on my deathbed, I'm not going to look back and think about the big case I won, and I'm not going to think about the fancy thing I bought. I'm going to think about all those people that I got to hug, and that I got to feel like I played a little bit of a role in the hardest day of their life, where they felt like they became their truest self. Like there's that moment when you cross that finish line, and as a guy who doesn't know if I'll ever cross another finish line, don't ever take that for granted. Remember that. But, just it's just a magical thing, and you just have to enjoy it, and you have to embrace it.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's something else I wanted to give you a little bit of space for is running with injury too. I know that's something that's kind of been something you've been navigating lately.
This is the
So
longest I have gone without running since 1998. This is the longest I've gone. I haven't run in 4 months. It's a very long time.
wow, I mean, you're still staying active in the community. Do you think that's going to be really important now, right? Like like having to deal with injury, you're going to like lean into the community more and more, and
Yeah, I mean, it makes it harder. I mean, like if somebody's whining about their run, or I'm just like, come on, I mean, I would give anything to just go take a run. I mean, you can't imagine how it feels to have a bad day and not be able to go have a run, or be mad at somebody, or need to work something out in your head. And it's like it's something that I use a lot to get through my day, or to start my day, or to bond with my dog, or see things and listen to music, all that stuff. So it's very, and that's, you're in recovery. It's about gratitude. You should,
yeah,
if you're out there running and you're listening to this, just like stop and look around and just be like, you know what, I'm grateful. I mean, I have a list in my drawer right here of people. This list right here, I'll hold it up to you. These names, these are people that have died. These are running friends of mine that died. Like my buddy from the turkey trot, or like people from our community. And be grateful, because there's a lot of people that would give anything to be able to do what we're doing right now. And that's an important trait to have. It's knowing that you're living somebody else's dream.
and you just touched on something that's been like big, like I'm sure you agree with that. Do you go through like ebbs and flows in your recovery? Like you kind of like, I'm not saying I'm like worried about relapsing, but I kind of catch myself like kind of having that like stinky thoughts and just like, I kind of like have a low and a high, but it's like, so that's been like my new, I love that you say gratitude because that's been like my key word for like 3 weeks because I was like complaining, like I had a DNF and the blah, blah, all these things that don't actually define like who I am at all as a person. And the same thing, I was just like, what are you complaining about? Like, and I recently
I would
had
love
like
to go have a DNF. I'd
yeah,
love to go
right.
have
So,
one.
and what you said speaks to that. It's like I bet someone wish they could have the opportunity to have the DNF. Like, be grateful that you're here. Like, have gratitude that you showed up at a starting line. So that's also been something I've really been having to like practice. Like, I mean, 5 years in, I'm not relapse proof or anything. So I'm still
God
working.
no.
Yeah,
God
right.
no.
I mean, one day, like we say, one day at a time. So I've been having
And
like
that's also
really
why I go to meetings, like I still go to meetings. I used to go to meetings to talk about my problems. I used to go to meetings to get advice. I used to go to meetings to help other people. Now I go to meetings. And what I say is, good stuff is happening in my life, and I'm still not drinking. Or I go to meetings and I say, terrible stuff is happening in my life. And there was a girl very early in my recovery. I remember her mom, her sister, and her best friend all died in the same like month, maybe. And she kept coming to me, and she, with tears in her eyes, she would come and she would tell everybody, I just want you all to know this happened. This is what I'm going through, and I'm not drinking over it. And that was very impactful to me because there's a tendency when things are going right in your life or when they're really bad to avoid going there and talking about it. But, like when my friend Alfredo got diagnosed with ALS, first thing we did, we went to a meeting. He raised his hand. He said, the doctor just told me I have ALS, and I don't want to die, and I'm scared, but I'm not going to drink. And he didn't. He didn't drink. So that's the other thing is to go there and share your experience with people and to share the fact that you're not drinking. And again, to be grateful because some
right.
people always say that, I'm grateful alcoholic, and I have to stay grateful because I've never seen a grateful alcoholic drunk.
Absolutely. Man, I'm gonna have to keep that one. Well, Scotty, I think that's a great segue to end this. Gratitude, man. Thank you for saying that. That's been like a key. That's been a common theme for me, really, really lately. I've been having to focus on that word. Scotty, man, thank you for your time. This has been awesome.
Anytime.
We'll have to have you on the music podcast. I love music too. I don't get as deep as you guys do. Maybe I need to. Maybe that'd be a cool way to kind of like dive deeper into like different. I love being forced to listen to stuff I would never otherwise listen to. I think that's really cool.
That's what the show does. It does that to me. And people bring on albums, and I'm just like, oh, I don't want to listen to this 100 times. And then I fall in love with it. Almost every single album. There's only been a couple that I didn't like. Every other album, I'm just like, oh, now I have a new favorite band.
Well, cool, Scotty, man. Thank you so much. This has been awesome. Yeah, and thank you so much for anybody that's tuned in. This has been fantastic. 18 episodes in. I know I'm still young, but every time I check another episode off the list, I'm just like, wow, I'm still doing this thing. So thank you so much for being here, Scotty. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. And look forward to episode 19. I got a really cool guest coming. I'll post that after Christmas. And thank you for joining us.